One of the most interesting things about fashion design is seeing how designers evolve over time. Hi, I'm Nino,
And I'm Sophia.
and this is Fashion Tea with Nino and Sofia. Today's guest is Carlos Palacios Jr. Carlos has over 10 years of experience in the fashion industry, working across multiple design categories, with a strong focus on evening wear and bridal design. Over the years, he has grown from assistant designer to senior designer, working closely with creative directors, development teams, factories, fittings, and product development, bringing both technical knowledge and creative vision to the design process. Carlos is also a graduate of FIDM, FIDM, where he studied fashion design with a focus on evening wear. Today we're going to talk about realities of working in the industry, the evolution of a designer, creativity, growth, and what it really takes to build a career in fashion. Carlos, welcome to Fashion Tea with Nino and Sofia.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you
Thank
for taking the time in your busy schedule to hang out with us and chat
Oh,
and
yeah, no
enlighten us
worries.
and share your knowledge and wisdom and experience and all that. I was looking at your resume. It reminded me that when you graduated from FIDM, you were assisting Candace Cuoco.
Yes, I was an intern I was design assistant and sample maker for her.
Tell me about that. For those of you in the audience that don't know, Candace Cuoco was in Project Runway to begin with, and she's a well-known established designer. And she's a very unique look. You know, she's a certain unique style, a certain unique voice. Tell us what it was like to graduate from a school, from a classroom, going into boom, working for Candace. Tell us about that.
Well, actually, it was in the middle of the entire time that I was at FITM that I was actually interning for her.
Oh,
I was walking back from work one day and I just randomly saw that someone was taking pictures in front of a fountain in front of a hotel. And it just like for some reason like it kind of tweaked in me and I was like, she looks so familiar. And like I get a little closer, I'm like, oh, that's Candace Cuoco. And so then technically I fangirled and was like, can I take a photo? Da, 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 da. I told, and then we had like a small conversation. And then she said, oh yeah, been looking for interns here, here's my email, send me and we'll get everything together. And then later it all worked out. I interned for her. And from there I learned so much at that internship. It's very useful.
what did you learn? Can you share any of the things that you didn't learn in a classroom?
I learned to get faster at sewing because we had deadlines, we had fittings. I learned
Mm,
more intricate and
deadlines.
shortcuts. Yeah, I learned a lot of intricacies and shortcuts when it comes to sewing, when it comes to fitting. I created new fabrics using like three different fabrics for her.
Oh, wow.
Um, but the main and then leather. I learned a lot about how to work and sew and just mold leather into what you actually needed to get to.
That's
So,
really cool. I've personally never worked with leather, and I know it's a whole new ball game. What would you say are like the main characteristics of working with leather? Why is it so different from everything else that we could work with as designers?
well, the big difference is that it's skin, right? So it's not our skin, but it's the animal hide itself that you're using. So you have to use a very specific needle that is almost surgical grade because it can pierce without actually breaking on you.
Mm.
Um, Sometimes, like when people are making leather bags, they actually use an awl and they make holes prior to because then they're hand stitching with a thicker thread. But when it's going through a machine, you need to make sure you have that right needle, or it's just going to break on you. And the Teflon feet. is a very good choice to have. And if you don't have that, piece of paper. Just
Mm.
piece of paper and you sew with it, it'll feed through the metal with you, and then you just rip it off.
I remember that trick actually. Nice.
Yeah, working with leather is that it's a skin, an irregular skin. It's not like a piece of fabric that you can lay down with grain lines and all that. So it's like a puzzle, if you will. It's interesting.
And no two skins are alike. So you have to
Mm.
get very close to each other. And then the way that you cut, sometimes you'll cut one leather piece this way, and then the next leather piece, you kind of have to go off on an angle just to get the right, look and feel with the two of them.
I'm curious, what is the most memorable thing that happened to you at that internship? I know I've had my moments of excellence and my moments of oopsie doos. So, what are your highlights, would you say, or what is your main highlight from that?
I think my main highlight was all the information and like all the knowledge that I gained working under her and working amongst everyone that was there as well. I think that is the most invaluable memory of itself to have is just it got me to be a better sewer. It got me to think more outside the box than what the books, always tell you. So.
And I definitely think you brought that into the classroom. We were in a class together that was called Collections, I believe, and we had to make a three-piece collection. And may I say, your sewing was impeccable and light years away from the majority of the rest of us. I remember you made a beautiful cigarette pand, and I don't remember what the rest of the collection looked like, but that I think really paid off for you.
Yeah, and I always loved mock-ups. I always loved making them. Muslin is always a fun thing to have around. Um, I know a lot of people will just cut straight into their fabric, but I always say just make a muslin. Always make a muslin or a toile. It will always be your best friend because then when you cut into the actual fabric, it's just you just glide through everything because you've already done all of the technical work prior to it.
So I've never worked with an in-house sample maker in any of the companies I've worked for. I'm curious, how many muslins or prototypes did you do before getting to the final fabric? I'm curious to know what that process is like in a smaller company.
Let's see. I think it really depends. With Candace, I think I would make one sometimes. Sometimes we would just go straight into fabric and then we would just tweak as we go because we're just on time crunches. When I was at Aria, it would be a one toile just to get it right on the proportions for the brides. And then at Azazi, it'll be one it'll be one toile, and then if we have to tweak anything, like say neckline or where like a seam goes, we'll just use tape on that one toile. If it's something completely like a change in like the fat in the fabric or something in the shape of the skirt or something like that, then we would have to cut a second toile for it. So that's what I've noticed so far is that it's about 1 to 2. And then when I do my own personal projects, I'm looking at like 3 to 4, but it's only I'm very persnickety about my about my mock-ups and my finals. So I tend to do a little bit more than going straight into the fabric.
So in like bigger companies, it's usually a lot more. So that's really interesting. But that to me, actually, as I'm like thinking about it and you're talking about it, that makes sense, which I'm sure is what we're going to talk about later. But you did so much bridal, and I'm sure even the mock-ups are so time consuming because you're constructing a wedding dress, which is so amazing.
There are shortcuts to it. I do love those shortcuts.
Got it. So how did you go from leather to bridals? It's a whole different animal.
It is a very big different animal between the two. I've always just loved yardage and yardage and yardage of fabrics. If you or anyone were in any of the other classes with me, I would come with bolts and bolts and bolts on my shoulder of different fabrics because I would just love playing with different fabrics. Like even I think you were there when you saw my first dress in the black lace.
Oh yeah.
That I wasn't supposed to technically use anything but muslin. And I decided to just, you know what? Nah, I'm gonna go for it. I was like, I'm gonna play with lace and silk and just have fun. And so I built a gown. And then from there, I was like, okay, I'm liking the yardage of fabrics. And then it's just how it was. I just kept on doing yards and yards, even though FITM wanted to do ready to wear and pieces and what's actually selling in the market a lot. I was like, okay, well, I want to take evening wear, but I want to keep on learning how to do it. But within the parameters of the school, how am I going to do that? Oh, I'll just cut my dresses in pieces and call it's ready to wear, but in actuality, I just made a gown. I just had to cut here and there.
That's good. That's clever. That's very good.
And I think I had this conversation with other alumni as well, but fashion school is really what you make it out to be. So I know there are people who could just do the bare minimum and slide through, and then you could also, like you said, you almost gave yourself your own specialty in the existing curriculum, or you could work extra hard to get, more information from the professors. Really, it is what you want to make out of it.
I loved you as a professor too, but my also favorite professor as well was Ophelia.
Oh
Or,
yeah.
yeah, Ophelia, Odelia.
Ophelia, Ophelia.
Yeah, Ophelia, yeah, yeah. I loved her, and she pushed me. She pushed me to the max and far and beyond. I think there was it's the button-up shirt that you do in one of the classes. My machine at home broke. And so I couldn't finish it. And then so I went early to school to try and finish it. And then I had a mental breakdown because the sleeve wasn't setting in correctly and I couldn't figure it out at the time. And so I just had to turn in a one sleeved button up and she wasn't really happy. And so that made me feel bad because I let her down. And so I was really hard on myself after that on my time management. So I was just like, no, I'm never gonna let any of my professors down because if I do, it's like, no, I can't do this. So
So tell us
So,
about Aria. How did you find the position? Were you
yeah.
searching online or how did that?
yeah, I was searching online because by the time I was at the end, I was already looking for something in the industry. So I was going through all the different websites, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn. I even went to Craigslist, and then that's where I found it.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
Mhm. And I interviewed with Tak Hao, which is the owner and head designer. We vibed really well with each other, and so he hired me. And then I had to figure out because I still had one more class at FITM. I think it was business
Business
of
of fashion.
yeah, business of fashion. I still had that one class, and it was always on Wednesdays for me, but he wanted me in on Wednesdays, so I had to figure out how to make the two things coexist. And I was like, hey, how can I get out of this class? Like, how do I get out of this class but still get the credit for said class? And they were like, okay,
Sounds good.
have them send the transcript over and then we'll go through and we'll see if it amounts to the same as what we consider the class to be. And I was like, okay, cool. So I have them send that, and then in that time, I just didn't go to class. I just went to work. So after the first day, and then so I got my spot, I'm in class, and then I never showed up to class. And then
And
because I was going through that process and I was working.
Wow.
I think that brings up a good point, which we haven't touched on, is that you had taken other classes before you started studying fashion, right? So that I think your background in that also plays a big part in all of this.
Yes, I went to Weber State University and I got my degree in professional sales. So I did a lot of business, I did a lot of customer service, demographics, negotiations. I have that whole kind of like background on it. Um, and then I went to FITM in fashion design, the PDAA course, which is the 2 year but smushed into a 1 year. But it was just everything got smushed, and so that's how I got out of business of fashion was just sent my transcripts. They looked at it. They were like, "Oh yeah, about 7 of these classes you took equates to one of our classes. So we'll give you the passing grade. You're done."
You mentioned interviewing at ARIA. I think a lot of our audience would be interested in learning more about the interview process. What is that like to approach a company and like what goes on in an interview? Tell us a little about that.
I was, well, I'm always nervous because it's always funny because I went to sales before. So I should be able to pitch anything, right? I should be able to sell myself. I can sell almost anything except for myself. I am the worst critic of myself. And so when it comes to interviewing, I am just like fumbling. I don't know how to like sell myself. So I had to go in with it like a relaxed mind, answer all their questions, give them a lot of examples of what I've done, show them examples or even tell them about examples of like my worth ethic or any stories that I have that might work within the frame that like they have. So I really pushed that I have good customer service. I can also design. I can do one-on-one sales. I can handle, a few people in the back room, sample room. Um, I really just had to like sell those details and back them up as much as I can, while also giving like good personality, answering all of the questions, not being too arrogant, not being too shy. Like it's a balance of a conversation that you're having with them in any interview.
I remember thinking like, wow, because you got promoted so quickly. I think quicker than most people, most designers. So I think another great thing to know is how do you think you got to that point? I mean, you got to such a high level so quickly within the companies you worked for.
I would say it's just all the hard work that I've done. So at Aria, from assistant designer to assistant designer slash sample or assistant sample room lead, I was always trying to get in the back and the front. I always worked the front room with the clients, and I always worked the back room with the sample maker, the cutter, and the alterations. So I was working both sides, and I was just like managing and doing little things here and there, just adding more than what my job description said.
Mm.
And so then that's how I got the added title at Aria. Um, and then so then I and then uh my boss, he would just leave me alone for like a day or two, and then I would just be running everything because he trusted me because I learned the ins and outs of everything that had to be done, even though it wasn't part of my job description. um and then at Azazi it was almost the same thing. I learned the ins and outs of everything that was around me, and then it made me more valuable. And then slowly it would be giving me more responsibility. Slowly it would be promoting me to the next tier as I go on and on and on, and ending up as senior designer.
Yeah. That's great advice. When I was at FITM in the Career Center, I would tell students if you're doing an internship, even though it's free, but if you work hard and you make yourself indispensable after that 3 month internship period, if you are so valuable, they'll hire you. They'll say, you know what, we can't let this guy go. He's amazing. Let's give him a salary and keep him on board. Yeah.
And I'm curious because you wanted to focus on evening wear, right? So what is it that made you so passionate about bridal? I mean, I can totally see it. I see you doing bridal, but maybe what led you straight into that area, which you're so great at now?
I have no idea. Um, to be honest, it was I know that when I first thought of, oh, maybe I should be going into fashion design, I think I was 12 or 13, and I was in art class, and instead of drawing people or background or anything, I was more focused on what they were wearing. And I was like, okay, this is weird. Why am I only focusing on like a thing versus the whole picture? And so then I was like, okay, well then maybe I'll go in this route. And so then I started drawing clothing and clothing and clothing. And then my cousin from LA, she noticed that I was just in this like weird little loop. And so then she opened my mind up to a bunch more things. I started watching a lot more fashion shows, and I just gravitated towards gowns, evening wear, bridal. Um, and then I think that what really clicked it with me in bridal is I just like the intricacy and all the handwork. And I think how special the day is really for the client.
Mhm.
And so I think that is my whole entirety of why I've just had bridal in my mind, and now that I'm in bridal, it's just I just love the interest in the whole thing, just going from pen and paper, 2D, constructing the entire image into a 3D figure, and then now it's going to be on a future bride, and she's walking down the aisle, and that dress just means a lot. Like there's a lot of meaning and memory that this dress is going to hold. And I think that's really why I love bridal, and I think I went into like I just kind of stuck with it.
Another fun question for our audience, since you worked for an ex Project Runway star, would be how do you think Project Runway equates to the real world? Also, since you worked in more one-offs kind of companies that are, again, more time consuming than what I've done with a pair of leggings. So I'm just curious, what's your opinion on that? A lot of people ask me that question, like, is it like Project Runway?
When when I was with Candace, we were just like on. Like we got into a flow. Everyone there got into a flow. We were just running with it. I think if you're on the actual show itself, I think it's a big mental game because you're sewing. You're really not doing anything else for 8, 12 hours a day or whatever it is that they have for production. Um, it's truly a mental game when you're on Project Runway versus in like small ateliers or small businesses. You have room to breathe. Like you could take a break. Like you have the time. You're still putting the same amount of energy. You're just expanding it very, more. So I think
So that transition from Aria to Azazi, what happened at Aria? Why Azazi? How did that happen?
so at Aria, I was this close to becoming a designer for Aria. I was this close, but the investors decided that it was too expensive to have the atelier open. So they closed their doors and then moved all production to China. So
So there goes your job.
there goes my job. I know it's really hard and it sucks. No one really tells you how that's going to feel and how that goes. And also, I didn't know that I was going to have to fire everyone in the sample room.
Oh my God.
Yeah. How old was I? I was 24, 25, 24, 25, I think, somewhere around there. And I had to fire everyone in the sample room.
Wow.
Yeah.
That must be
Like
devastating.
I had to tell them that, we have like a few days left for you guys. And then I had to work the sample room till the last days. So a lot of our brides were sad. I did, however, there is like a little bit of a limelight at the end of the tunnel here. Is that a few of the brides didn't want to go anywhere for alterations, so they came to me
Oh,
because I knew the dresses inside out, I knew the fabrics, I knew them. I had grown a relationship with them throughout the one time that we met for a few hours. And so I had business afterwards just doing alterations for all the brides that it just fell through from.
right. So now you're a consultant, correct? Tell us about that aspect.
Yeah, so I moved from LA to Charleston, and I was given the chance to consult instead of being full remote, and I love it. I get to do my own schedule. I have a little bit more free time. Um, I can do way more research than I used to before. Less questions. I don't have to be bombarded with questions. From every angle. I can just focus on my research and my design and my illustrations. So I do love the freedom of that.
Yeah, I feel that. And I like the remote situation as well for that same reason. That's awesome that you have that opportunity.
So instead, just to keep up with my sewing skills and everything, I got a job at an alterations for
Oh, wow.
bridals. I'm the bridal specialty alterations for them. So I'm keeping up with being here physically, but also still doing the consulting.
That's such a great balance. I would have
Wow.
never thought of doing that. That's
Yeah.
What would you say to a young aspiring designer nowadays? An 18-year-old kid that is interested in learning fashion designing. What would any words of advice or words of wisdom that you can share with them? What would you say?
Oh, just have fun. Um, Play outside the box if, as much as you can, you know. What I always like to say is like in when I'm doing bridal is I have a box of crayons and I get to play with all my crayons as much as I want. But there are times where I was like, okay, well, the company is only giving me X amount of crayons. I want more crayons. Like, I want more crayons. But for anyone who's new, yeah, just have fun. You know, it'll find you versus you trying to find it.
Good one.
And in your specialty, really, because that's how it was for me. Is bridal really found me, and then I was like, oh yes, I want bridal. Um, and then just, you know, put your full heart into it. You can't, especially because it is physical more than just digital. I mean, nowadays it is digital, but depending on what you're learning and depending on which portion of the fashion industry you're going into, it'll depend if it's more digital or more physical. So always be open to learning new things, always be open to question everything within a degree of things. But there are some things you shouldn't question. There are some things that you just go with the flow with. Because if you question them and you get it wrong, you always go back to exactly how they told you to. So I've learned that the hard way. Um, where I questioned some things and then I was like, oh, that's why we do it. I get it now. No, no, I shouldn't have opened that little can of worms. So
Yeah. And you worked really hard. I think besides the crayon part, which is definitely essential, I think working hard is also an important element of being successful.
I think so. Yeah, it's always keeping yourself available to do things, always keeping yourself open to doing more than what your job description states, because 9 out of 10, or actually, 10 out of 10 times, you're doing something that you didn't think you were going to be doing, and you're doing it anyways. I thought I was just going to be in design. I didn't know I was actually going to be managing people. I didn't know I was actually going to be doing wholesale. I didn't know I was communicating with other companies. I didn't know I was communicating with factories. Like, I didn't think so far from what I thought at the beginning, where it was just like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to design dresses. I know my background in sales will help me, but I'm just going to design dress it. No, no, you have to keep your mind open because there's going to be a lot of facets and a lot of branches that you don't even know exist until you start going down it. And then you'll find, oh, well, I like this aspect, but I like this aspect, but then I like this one. And then you're just branching off until you find that perfect pinpoint that it flows well with you. It doesn't feel like a job. You feel like you're having fun, you're working, but you're making all these memories with everyone. It's not just a day-to-day paycheck. It just takes time and
I
hard
think
work.
we're so courageous to try all those new things, and I think that got you so many cool experiences. I know you got to, I believe, work with Panina Tournay, or who was it that you had a
Yeah.
collaboration with?
So we had Azazi, we had a collab with Mattel for Barbie.
Oh, that's what it was. That's what
We
it was.
had a collab with Panina Tournay for Bridesmaids. We had a collab with Christian Siriano for Bridal and Bridesmaids. And then, and we had a collab with Kardashians, K and K. So there was a collab with those two as well. So yeah, so we had many collabs throughout the time there. And then the Oscar dresses, the Elton John party dresses, and then the Normani.
Wow.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Just because I pushed myself and the company pushed themselves as well. But even being part of them, I think it's because I pushed myself to be part of them. With the Christian Siriano one, I know two of my designs got to go onto his runway show. I got to fly out to New York and go into his studio, and then we had the whole like opening exhibition of the collection.
That's great.
Working in LA, right?
Yeah.
Wow, I've
All
learned so
right.
much about your background. That's amazing. I love all these
Yeah,
details.
thank you for spending so much valuable time with us. This is amazing information. Thank you again. And for those of you in the audience that are not familiar with our platform, subscribe so that when we have our next Fashion Tea with Nino and Sofia, you will be notified. So thanks again. Have a wonderful weekend. Till we meet again.
Bye.
Bye.